Welcome to Get Bit Outdoors, your informative and how-to podcast with product reviews for hunting, shooting, and fishing. Primarily, the focus is Pacific Northwest based, with an emphasis on walleye waters, techniques, the Pacific Northwest Walleye Tournament Trail, big game hunting, and archery, bringing you all the information you need to get bit by your outdoor passion. So come on in and get bit. On this episode, we talk with Jana Waller. She gives us some insight on how she got started in the business, getting kids involved in the outdoors, her past hunts, wishes for warriors, and a whole lot more. It's a great listen, so come on in and join us. Welcome, Jana, to Get Bit Outdoors podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and chat with us for a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing I like to talk more about than hunting, fishing, and the great outdoors. So, yeah, you bet.
There you go. So I'm going to dive right into this real quick. My in-laws are coming to Wisconsin here in about, let's say probably a month. And he told me I had to ask you about the fishing.
I love it. I am from southern Wisconsin. I live in Montana now. I have for the last 6 years, but I spent the 38 years of my life, yes, you can do the math, in Wisconsin, and it is truly one of the best states for fishing. It's almost as if every town has their secret fishing spot. And then, of course, you've got the Great Lakes, which are amazing and a whole nother ballgame. But it all depends on if you're going fishing in Wisconsin, what species you're after, but we've got them all. I mean, from fantastic bass fishing, which are typically thought of actually as sort of the southern fish, you know.
Sure.
But Wisconsin's got some great bass fishing, amazing walleye, northern, you name it. She just has to name a species and I'll point her in the right direction.
Well, chances are, my guess is it's probably going to be walleye and muskie.
Mm-hmm. Walleye and muskie. Well, walleye is a piece of cake. There's a lot of great places. My mom lives on Lake Kashkanan. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's actually a glorified swamp, we call it. But it has some amazing fishing, and it really has everything. But it does have great walleye fishing. The Rock River runs into the lake, and so you've got the river systems if the lake isn't hitting it, and the lake if the river, and vice versa. That's, of course, my hometown of Fort Atkinson, so it's what I'm really familiar with.
There you go.
But there are other great walleye spots in mid to northern Wisconsin, and then, of course, a pop across the border, and you're in walleye and northern heaven. Now, muskies, on the other hand, it's funny. I've never really fished muskie where I live in southern Wisconsin. They're definitely more of a northern fish, or jumping right across the border into Minnesota, because Minnesota has some of the most world-renowned muskie fishing on the planet.
Sure. Yeah, when we start talking about the fishing side, that's my love. I love hunting, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start talking about fishing, that's where it gets me. And it's funny because my father-in-law, he's on this mission to, for one, buy a license in every state, and to catch a fish in every state. And I think he's got 36 of them knocked off, and Wisconsin's one of them that he's looking for.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's all dependent on species, but just to catch a fish, he'll have absolutely no problem. Like I say, they're in and around southern Wisconsin. There really is almost a lake in every town, and it's got amazing perch, bluegills, like bass, walleye. We could go on and on, but he's definitely not going to have any problems there.
Yeah, I figured as much. So, give everybody that's listening a little bit of a background on you. Obviously we know where you're from, but you also host Skullbound TV, and
yep.
The other thing I'd like to get into in a little bit is your skull work. But yeah, just give everybody an idea of what it's all about.
Sure. Well, since this is a hunting fishing podcast, we'll start from there. I'm really fortunate to have a dad who saw my passion for the great outdoors at a really young age. I'm one of two daughters, and my older sister, it's funny how we can grow up in the same household and be so incredibly different. She is an amazing woman. She's a mom of 3 kids, lives a completely different lifestyle than I do, but not really, even though we grew up under the same roof, not really into hunting and fishing like I was. But I've always, from being a toddler on, was outside and collecting bugs and frogs and playing in the hay fields. I lived out in the country, and I think my dad. Now, of course, he probably wanted a boy. Being his second child, already had a girl. Probably that's probably a little bit, part of the story is sort of turning me into that tomboy, if you will. But I also think it's always been in me. I have a picture. It's really one of my first memories. I had to be 2 or 3 years old. I had my big old rubber boots on and my winter coat, and I was down in the garage waiting for my dad to come back from catching ducks, as my mom said. I used to say, catching ducks. And I used to love the feel of the duck's feathers and the smell of them. And I can remember from 2 or 3 years old being enthralled by when my dad came home from a hunt. And we lived in southern Wisconsin, so it was primarily birds, duck, pheasant, goose, and then, of course, whitetails and turkeys. When I got a little older, he started to get into big game hunting. But he sort of fostered that, and he would take me along on pheasant hunts. I always joke about as soon as I was old enough to walk the hay fields or the cornfields of Wisconsin without complaining about the hike, that's when my dad started taking me, and I would assume it was 5 or 6 years old. And we'd sit in the goose blind or the duck blind, and even though I didn't have a weapon in my hand because the age limit was 12, I loved going along with him and just experiencing Mother Nature, because all of us true hunters know that that's really a big component of what hunting is all about.
Yes, it is.
And then I signed up for hunter safety class at the age of 12. And there was one other girl in my class. It was probably like 20 boys and 2 girls. And it's so fun nowadays. I go into a lot of hunter safety classes just to say hi and hopefully motivate the kids. But it's great to see some of these classes are 50-50 girls and boys. But then we started hunting South Dakota when I was in junior high together. And then when I was in high school, he started getting into big game hunting. I didn't start to get into it until I was a freshman in college, when I had sat in the tree stands a lot with my dad and with my high school boyfriend, but I'd never owned my own bow or rifle. But when I was freshman in college, I met a gal who was a bow hunter. And I remember that day so vividly, thinking, if she could do it, I could do it. Like, why aren't I out there? Why aren't I just really, at that time, this was a long time ago. This was 25, 26 years ago. There weren't a lot of women on TV, hunting. There was Brenda Valentine, who I just have mad respect for. I think she's a pioneer. But other than that, there really weren't that many women, especially women my age and 19, 20 years old, who bow hunted. When I met her, it was completely inspirational. And I went and got my first bow my freshman year and practiced. I got a doe that following season, and that just sparked my passion. I think this is my 25th year bow hunting.
Nice.
But it really all leads back down to when I was a kid, and my dad just let me shadow him and take me along. And it was that spending time with my dad, who I really admired, and being able to, I thought it was so cool when we'd sit down for dinner and he'd cook up a pheasant. My mom would cook up the pheasant, and we'd find a BB, and my dad would give us a buck for the first BB. And so you should see all of it, my kid, my sister, and I eating really fast to find that BB. He made it fun. And there was something so cool about the fact that we hunted that pheasant together. Like, I remember thinking how cool that was when I was little. Sure. And so that's sort of the beginning of my passion for hunting.
Well, and the funny thing, too, about that is that sometimes it gets lost in today's society where, a lot of times with the kids, they just want that time. It doesn't really matter what it is you're doing outside. They just love the time that you spend with them.
Amen. And what a better way for a dad and a daughter, or a mom and a daughter, to bond. I think sometimes, it still occurs where, dad can bond with the boy. It's it's just sort of innate, if you will. But I truly believe that my dad is one of my best friends, and I believe it's our connection through hunting and fishing. I think we both we love telling each other stories. Of course, spending time together in the field and really connecting with one another.
Yep.
And I get a lot of emails, or I get stopped at expos, and I get asked by men who say, "How do I get my daughter involved?" Or, my teenager seems to be always got their head buried in their phone or tablet, or how do I get them interested in the outdoors? And those are really critical questions. And my first response is take them along. They don't have to have a weapon in their hand. Take them along and show them what it's like to be sitting in a tree stand, all camouflaged up, having deer right beneath you, watching hawks land on branches by your head. It's just take them along and let them experience that it's not all about killing or pulling a trigger. It's about living in the great outdoors and appreciating the land that we live on.
Exactly. One of the things that, because it is so hard nowadays to pull those electronics from kids. And the one thing that I've tried to do is incorporate that in the outdoors where, you come hunting with me or fishing, it's okay to bring your phone. I don't want you on it unless you're taking pictures. So now you can take the pictures. Your hunting is the picture taking. So you see the deer, you see the, whatever, and they can take the pictures of that, and that's their trophy.
That's great. I love that. I've never heard that explained like that. That's fantastic. It's almost like proverbial paintball. I've always joked about, it'd be fun for kids to be able, of course, I would not recommend this whatsoever, but, like you said, being able to walk away with something that's a wonderful idea to have them take pictures, show their friends. It's such a confidence builder too.
Right.
And over time, kids get better at it. They understand what can they get away with. How is the wind affecting my hunt or my connection with these animals? And it goes to a deeper connection than people. I often have people who don't hunt who just don't understand the connection, and that's the connection to animals, the planet, the balance of it all. And it can take sometimes quite a bit of time to explain to them what it all means. But that's a great reference when you say let kids go out. And hey, we're all guilty of playing on our phones when we're sitting in a tree stand or when we're sitting over a wallow, or I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, as long as they're at least halfway actively engaged and their heart rate can go up when they see that bull out come in, or they hear the crunch of leaves and there could be a deer coming, or I wish so much that we were able to explain to the non-hunters and maybe even the antis of really what it is all about.
Sure. Yeah. And that's exactly one of the reasons why I started doing that with the kids, because, they were kind of apprehensive about, shooting an animal. Okay. Well, I get that. A lot of kids can be that way, especially when they've, it's new to them. So my oldest daughter, she's never been one that wanted to hunt, but she loves to take pictures, and she has taken some beautiful pictures when we've been out. And now it's kind of become that game where how close can I get to take that picture? And some of the stuff that she's taken, I've told her, I said, you should make prints of these, because, I've seen some artwork that isn't even close to this. And it was, a lot of it was done on her phone.
Yeah, that's such an encouraging way to get them involved. And, when we love something, we're going to protect it. And that's a great introduction to kids as well, is that, take a look at those whitetails, for example. If we didn't manage the herds, think about how many more deer would die by car accident, how many more deer would die by disease and overpopulation, chronic wasting disease and EHD and blue tongue, and, these diseases that tend to strike when herd numbers are really high. And, and it's a great introduction to the fact that we hunters are also the ones paying for wildlife management in this country. Through the Pittman-Robertson Act of 1937, there is a tax on all hunting-related products, ammunition, guns, archery equipment, and that tax, as well as our cost of our licenses and our tags, and other conservation dollars, that goes towards wildlife management in every single state.
Sure
We
does.
hunters are the true animal lovers, and I think that that's a great way to get them involved, whether they are behind a weapon or not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it has made a connection with them. You know,
Yep.
and I hope one day that, you know, they do get that bug. And it's interesting because, like, with my son, and I think a lot of people go through this where they'll lose their kids for a little bit during that teenage
Yep.
year. And
Yep.
once he turned, probably 19, 20 years old, then it was, all right, now we're into it serious. You know, he started coming up to elk camp for, you know, a week at a time. And
Hmm.
that's when he really started shifting his focus to, yeah, this is something I really enjoy. But
I completely agree with you because that happened to me. You know, here, like I said, I was into it from being a toddler on. And when I hit, you know, that 14, 15, 16, I drifted away from it. I didn't really do much hunting or fishing with my dad. But then when I went to college and got back at, yep, 19 years old, got right back into it. And I think that's a really good point to make is that when older teenagers drift away, don't be hard on them. Don't, still encourage them and everything, but it's normal. I hear about that from a lot
yeah,
of people. And, if it's been rooted in them for years, they'll come back to it.
sure. Yeah, exactly. You know, because they have their interests when they get to be that age that, you know, sometimes it's not so cool to hang out with mom and dad or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just teenagers. And the thing I've
Yep.
noticed is that if you try to force it upon them, it just pushes them away. So let them do their thing. They'll come back to
Yep.
you. I promise you they'll come back.
Yep. I completely agree.
That's interesting. So I
Yep.
think I think I know the answer to this question, but I got to ask it anyway.
Go for it.
If you only had one way to hunt, so you could only choose one weapon, what would it be?
Uh-huh. I would choose archery because it's really, even though I started out with a shotgun bird hunting, big game is really what, to me, especially living out west here, drives me. I can't wait. September 3rd, we're going to be archery elk hunting. And even though I don't do as much archery hunting right now, currently with the show, as much as I would like to, it's one of the few solo female hosted shows out there. As much as I love archery hunting, I also like to show the entire process of the hunt, and archery hunting is just a bit tougher.
Sure.
And it's harder to fill my elk tag with a bow than it is with a rifle, and vice versa with, other species. So if I only had one, it would be a bow. But that being said, I am a lover of all weaponry. I have become obsessed with long range rifle hunting, which is really funny because I never really envisioned myself getting into long range rifle hunting, being that my history as a hunter is really rooted in archery. But when I moved out west 6 years ago, there are situations where we hunt a lot of public land, we hunt a lot of mountainous terrain. And as much as we're out there with a bow in the beginning of the season, when you don't fill that tag, you've got the rifle season to continue the hunt. And I'm going to use every excuse I could get to prolong
Sure.
my hunt. And I've been really fortunate to train with some of the best. And in my opinion, it takes a lot, as much if not more skill, to learn how to long range rifle shoot with accuracy and knowing every shot counts than sitting in a tree stand or sitting in a ground blind and having a 30-yard shot. When you are long distance, you need to know the ballistics, you need to calculate windage, you need to calculate altitude, and there's a lot of factors that come into play. And I've been really fortunate enough to train with Nemo Arms, and through Nemo, train with Chance Gianelli, Jack Neville, two world-renowned special forces operators who now train people how to shoot. And so, yes, I love archery, but I've really gotten into long-range rifle hunting as well. And there's been, for example, 2 years ago, I was out hunting with Jim, and we were hunting whitetails in this very mountainous area here in Montana. And we put on a lot of miles in the course of a day. And of course, you're always going to want to get as close to that animal as possible and make the most ethical shot. But there was a situation where I had a really beautiful 8-point whitetail bedded on a cliffside. And we dropped, where I spotted him was 425 yards away. And we spotted him and we dropped in through the timber to try to get a better look at him and try to get closer. But where he was positioned, there was simply no way to get closer. So we hiked back up to the spot I spotted him at. There was very little wind. I calculated all my ballistics. And when that buck stood up out of his bed, I heart shot him at 425. He went 30 yards. And that was a situation where we couldn't get any closer. I felt very comfortable with my 300 Win Mag, a Winchester short mag actually, and made the shot and knew I could. And it just happens sometimes where you're going to have those long shots, and it's really great to be comfortable in that.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing is, obviously you've went through the training and you have that confidence to make those shots. And there is a ton that goes into making long distance shots. And anybody that can do it, I tip my hat to them because, I've dabbled in that a little bit and, I don't have that confidence just because I haven't done it enough and went through enough of the training. But for, to see people do that and to have that confidence is just, it's incredible. It's like I said, I have respect for you.
I like it just as much as archery. I really do. There's just different aspects of the hunt. For example, let's take antelope, for example. I've hunted a lot of antelope, both rifle and bow. And, if I had to choose of sitting in a ground blind over a water hole all day long in the sweltering heat of August, I would rather wait and do a long range or a spot and stalk rifle hunt and hopefully get, within 200 yards of an antelope. It's just way more fun. You put a lot more miles on the ground. You're going to see more. You're out in the fresh air. You're glassing, and then hiking over the next ridge and glassing. Now, I know a lot of guys might say, well, you can do that with a bow. You can, but I'm not comfortable shooting past 50 yards. Actually, 40 is where I'm personally very comfortable with. And there are a lot of women who can shoot way farther than that and be more comfortable with that, but that's my comfort zone. And so to get up to, without a ground blind and with their incredible eyesight, to get up on an antelope spot and stalk is challenging. All the ones I've ever gotten have been with a ground blind. So that's a hunt where if I had to choose, I would choose spot and stalk with a rifle so that I can see more, cover more ground, just get out and about in the elements a little bit more.
Sure, yeah, and that all makes sense. Every individual hunt has its own aspect. You can sit there and say, okay, well, like you said, with your long distance antelope and you're out there spot stalk rifle hunting, but there's also a thing, where you can say, look at your spot and stalk on elk with archery, where you're, cruising and you're trying to get within a certain amount of distance. And so like I said, there's so much diversity, and that's what I like about your show is the fact that you guys do that. It's not just focused on one aspect, and so you give your audience
we really try to mix it up. One day we might be catching 11-foot sturgeon in the rivers of Oregon, and the next episode we're archery elk hunting, and then you tune on later and we were spot and stalk DIY bear hunting here in Montana. You never know what you're going to get. We really like to mix it up, but that's really because that's what we do. Jim and I literally hunt almost every month out of the year. Of course, the summer months we're fishing a lot more, or we might be doing some predator hunting for coyotes. But and in the winter months, we're still hunting. We're hoping to draw those early tags in New Mexico, for example, or we're mountain lion hunting here in Montana, or wolf hunting. We really hunt almost year round, and we love it all. The one thing that bothers me that I see on social media are hunters who sort of have an elitist attitude. Well, I only bow hunt. And then you can take that to another level. You've got the traditional archery guys who only trad hunt. And that's cool. I totally respect that. It's an amazing style of hunting and a total connection to the planet. But at the same time, I don't like seeing hunters divided. When I work with a lot of the conservation groups and I understand the forces that are going on behind the scenes to stop our passion for hunting. I think we are just so much stronger as bonding together. I think whether you're long range rifle hunting or you're a trad archery guy, we need to all band together and support one another.
Yeah, let's stick together on that because that's where it's going to count.
Yep, exactly.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys, and one of the shows that we've watched a couple times, and I'm not afraid to admit that, but your moose hunt, where we absolutely love that show. For one, because of the raw emotion you showed when you got it.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that. I mean, that was really cool.
Sure. Well, it was one of the most epic adventure hunts I've ever been on. I was really lucky enough to draw a moose tag in Alaska in a particular area, and I had put in as a party with my friend Ben Wohlers' daughter, Taylor. Taylor and I have done a lot of hunting together in the past 3 years. She's now 13, but when she was 10, for example, we went to Alaska and did a coastal black bear hunt together. She shot a beautiful black bear with my 300 Winchester short mag, one shot, perfect kill. I mean, this little girl is one of the most experienced teenagers I know of, and has just always a smile on her face, positive attitude, and a real reverence for what she's doing. She doesn't, she's not braggy. She's just appreciative of being out there. So we were so excited to do this moose hunt. We wanted to sort of do a DIY style hunt. Her dad, Ben Wohlers, a friend of ours, is a very experienced outfitter here in Montana, and he's done a bunch of guiding in Alaska. So, he definitely was, very skilled on knowing, where we should go, what we should do, who we should get in contact with. We contacted a friend of his who gave us the name of a guy we could rent horses from. So we rented the horses and went into our area, into the backcountry, and spent 5 days searching for bull moose. And it was absolutely, we couldn't have asked for a more epic adventure. The weather cooperated. It really only rained on us at night. A little bit of sprinkles during the day, but nothing what Alaska can typically throw at you.
Sure.
And so the evening we were scouting, our first evening there, we spotted something like 6 bulls or maybe 9 bulls and 2 really good ones, and we were keeping an eye on them. And the next morning we went back to where we spotted these 2 nice bulls, and they were still there. And we kind of worked down the valley. We were way camped high up on a mountain, and so we could just glass into all this valley fingers that went sort of in 3 different directions. And we worked our way down towards the valley floor to get closer to these 2 bulls, but they ended up disappearing into the thicket. And then we looked over, and Jimmy actually spotted this big bull who had laid down in this meadow. And it was literally with the Vortex spotting scope probably a mile away, but you could just tell that his paddles were huge and he was worth getting a better look at. So Ben and Taylor stayed up on the ridge glassing for another bull for her. Jimmy and I made our way down through the thicket. It took about an hour to get down to this meadow, and we're working into the meadow, and I peek around this tree, and sure enough, there's a cow staring at us at about 80 yards away, and we kind of ducked down in the grass and thought, uh-oh, we're busted. And sure enough, we stood back up a little bit later, and they were gone. But, it's the opening morning, so it's okay. They probably heard us making a bunch of noise coming through the alders. And we walked a little bit further in the meadow, sat down, decided to do a call sequence. And Jimmy's a great caller. He started doing his bull moose calls, and I was kind of taking my raincoat off. And we had the GoPro running at this time. He put the GoPro out in front of us, so what you see on that show is live and on the fly. And he whispered to me, "Don't move, shoot that bull," all in the same sentence, which was kind of like, conflicting. How am I supposed to shoot the bull if I can't move? Right. But I'm still looking around through the thicket. I'm on my knees, getting my coat off, backpack off, and trying to get situated and comfortable. And I then look at his camera where it's pointing, and I just see this big paddle coming through the thicket on the other side of the meadow. And long story short, that bull set. You don't see this on the show, of course. We only have 22 minutes to tell our whole story. But for 8 minutes, that bull stood and just raked this tree, not giving me a shot. And, my heart's racing. And I'm just trying to calm myself. And he ended up taking a couple steps. Jim did a little bit of a cow call. He whips his head around. I let the nozzler bark and watched this bull drop, and I just lost it. I just started crying, tears of appreciation, and I just couldn't believe how it all went down. And that raw emotion was captured thanks to Jimmy. And, you know, to be able to dream of going on a moose hunt and to be able to kind of do it with, you know, a couple good friends of yours and DIY, and, you know, you're lugging your camp gear and your food and your emergency kits and your clothing and I mean, it's a lot of work to get that kind of hunt prepared, and to be able to then, you know, get a 64.5-inch bull moose down on the ground, and you walk up to this amazing specimen, and it's overwhelming. I still get choked up thinking about that moment, and trying to lift this big paddle out of the thicket, and just to look at this amazing animal. And it will go down in history as one of the most epic hunts I probably will ever go on.
Well, like I said, that was the cool thing about it, was just seeing that emotion you had, and I'm so glad that you guys captured that. Because, you know, I guess maybe that's something that a lot of people that don't hunt or that aren't in that situation don't realize how much you do. I mean, it's about the harvest, but it's about everything, and you know,
right,
how all of that encapsulates what you've done, you know, through the whole journey that you've gone through, and to see that come out in that media is just, to me, it was incredible. So
well,
I
thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate that. It was, I can't wait to get him mounted and just stare at him every single day. The funny story is, you know, I never thought we'd be able to fly him back, but we took a chance. We packaged him all up, you know, he put protectors on every single tine, and, you know, we capped him off in the field, and we ended up GPSing the coordinates, so we were able to send in the horse guy to, of course, go get the moose. And so we're like, no way is Delta going to let this moose rack on. But it is Alaska, and they're used to this kind of thing, so maybe it would work. Well, sure enough, Jim got up to the counter, and I was in the truck waiting. We went the day before to make sure we could check it in. And there was this guy in front of him at the airport who was just pitching a fit that he couldn't bring his bear spray or fly out with his bear spray. And, you know, Jim sort of diffused the situation and made the lady behind the counter feel more comfortable. And long story short, when he stepped up there, she was in just thankful mood. I appreciate you, you know, for stepping in and trying to diffuse an angry customer. And he's like, well, maybe you can help me out. And long story short, she cleared my moose rack all the way to Missoula, Montana from Alaska.
Awesome.
I had to go on 2 or 3 different flights. I have the funniest pictures of the TSA guy not really happy with me checking in that moose rack. But I wasn't about to, you know, I just didn't want to risk shipping it, which you do every other time, and it always usually works out fine. But long story short, since the day I got home, I have had that moose rack with me, and I stare at it every day in appreciation. And I can't wait till it's actually back with the hide and on my living room wall, so I can share that story with everyone who comes to my house.
Heck yeah. So, in an honest moment, how many times have you watched that?
Oh, well, like before it even aired, probably 20.
I can't blame you.
You know, and some people don't know, Jim and I produce Skullbound, just the two of us. It's just us. We do have a friend, Grady Rowles, who's an amazing cameraman and editor. He helped us edit a couple episodes last year and probably will this year because we just are getting too swamped. But it's pretty much done out of the studio in our home here in Montana. And so it's fun watching the show come alive and grabbing bits and pieces. You know, on that kind of hunt, you know, we've got 12 hours of footage to go through to boil down into 22 minutes.
Sure.
It's challenging often to decide what bits and pieces you want to include. And it's fun to build that story. And it's just really fun to go back and look at that raw emotion over and over and over again. And when that bull moose stepped out, that's where I watched that scene like over and over and over and over.
I bet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't say Taylor, 13-year-old Taylor. Then 2 days later, got herself a beautiful bull. She spotted the bull herself. We ended up having to make a kind of treacherous stalk down a real steep hill. And then she had a kind of an awkward angle. She used shooting sticks, and it was pretty much almost kind of straight down. I think it was a 260-yard shot. She placed the most perfect shot on this bull. One shot, tips over on camera. I mean, the girl is a dead eye. And that was a two-part series. So that was the second part of that Alaskan adventure. And just to be able to be with her, and, you know, she did a lot of the skinning herself. And gosh, if that's not, you know, confidence building in a 13-year-old girl, I don't know what is.
Oh,
you know,
heck
hiking the Alaska bush, living in a tent, you know, eating, you know, mountain house every day, and, you know, just true. And, you know, definitely being cautious because it's grizzly bear territory.
Sure.
And, you know, you got to have confidence and be aware of your surroundings. And, you know, she's one tough cookie, and it was really fun to share that experience with her.
Well, and that's cool too, what you guys do with that as far as, you know, mentoring and you know, it goes back to your, you know, what you do with the warriors too, the wounded warriors.
Yeah.
You know, I have a ton of respect for you guys that do that. You know, I just think it's awesome how you do.
I really appreciate that, but really it's just because it's so rewarding.
Sure.
We started 3 years ago taking some veterans on hunts. One of the most well, they're all amazing though. I can't even say one, but we've taken Bo Richenbeck, who was a double amputee Navy SEAL, on his first bull elk hunt. That was another show filled with tears when he got his bull. He climbed the mountains on basically like his hands and stumps for 7 days. That guy is a true warrior. And to be with him when he got his bull elk, or even something as simple as a turkey hunt. I took 23-year Green Beret Greg Stubbe on his first turkey hunt. And there was a moment that we had that I think of all the time that it was so special. You know, we were sitting in the dark. It was day 2. Finally, the turkeys were talking, and they were just gobbling from the roost like crazy. We were in Kansas, and I whispered over to Greg, and I said, "Hey, Greg, finally, it's a good thing to be surrounded." And I could see him give me a little thumbs up in the dark. And later on that week, he got his 2 turkeys, and he was giving us his interview, and he got really choked up. And he said, you know, never before has it been put into perspective like that, that when she whispered that to me, and suddenly the weight of all that trauma of war was lifted off me, and it really was good to be surrounded. I get teary-eyed just thinking of that moment, and we literally had to stop rolling because we were all crying. And so a real special bond with him. And, you know, taking these warriors out hunting has been the most rewarding part of my job. It's just caused me to have such a better appreciation for our military and for our freedom. I think that a lot of us can often fall into the complacency of our freedom and not think about how lucky we are to live in this country, to, you know, choose a multiple of careers. We as women in this country can do anything we put our minds to, and to be able to own our own guns and have our own voice. And that's freedom isn't free. And to be able to spend time around a campfire in the woods with these warriors that have literally seen hell and back, and have watched their friends die in front of their eyes, and, you know, come back into civilization, and spending time with them, it's just really made me appreciate everything all the more. And I work with a group now called Wishes for Warriors, that their primary goal is to get veterans back into the woods and into Mother Nature and back on the water. To you know, there's a lot of healing power in Mother Nature, and there's also healing power in bonding and that brotherhood that Wishes creates again for these soldiers that have come back and they're now stateside. And so they're just a great organization that I'm really blessed to work with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm really respect the work that you guys do with that. So, you know.
Well, thank you very much. It's our honor.
One thing that I did want to ask you, and kind of talk about, because you guys say you do a lot of your own editing and things like that for your show, and
Yeah.
I can only imagine because, I just started the podcast here a month and a half ago, and it's a ton of work just doing
Mhm.
that going through. And I've done some videos that I put up on YouTube for fishing.
Mhm.
When somebody's starting out in that, what advice would you give them to say, okay, focus on this and maybe not so much on this, so that they kind of have a
Mhm.
direction of where they're going?
Sure. Well, like I tell everybody, don't quit your day job.
Yeah,
uh, just because it's a very competitive industry. I mean, we all love to hunt and fish, and it's very competitive as far as turning that into a career. You have to absolutely love every aspect of it, and we all know there's good and bad aspects of it. It can be exhausting and grueling. There's a sales and marketing side of, for example, having a TV show that is a lot of work. It's a lot of office work, and it's a lot of maintenance, and it's a lot of marketing. And you know, there's so many pieces of the puzzle, if you will, to have a successful career in the hunting industry. That what I would say first and foremost is um, stay true to yourself. I think that that's really important. I think especially for young guys who often reach out and say, "Hey, I'm just, young 20s, love to hunt and fish. How do I get into what you're getting into?" Um, I just think it's true. First of all, remember to be authentic. Be yourself. Whether you are into one form of hunting or another, or one species of one or another, be true to what you love. And also, it's a lot of work. And I always recommend starting, your passion on the side, maybe not jumping off the bridge, so to speak, into a career right away. It started on the side. I got my start actually through writing. I wrote for free for many different hunting websites just because I wanted to sort of stay connected. I started writing, my first one was womenhunters.com, and it's a big, very big, popular website for women, whether from how-tos to stories to product reviews. I started writing for them a long time ago, and not only was it fun seeing my stories published, but it was fun just connecting to the other women and sort of feeling like I had this little hunter women family out there. And then I wrote for bowhunting.net for a long time. I got my first article published a long time ago in Bowhunter magazine. That was really exciting. And then I started freelance writing, and I've been really blessed to be in a lot of publications. A lot of key to that is great photos and good storytelling. Maybe twisting your article to have a really different perspective than maybe what you see all the time. But outdoor writing was a big start for me. I did that long before Skullbound, and it was really good connection. It also was a connection to, reach out to some companies and say, hey, I'd like to represent your brand, or I'd like to be on your pro staff, and what I can provide for you is a place to write articles and get your products out there. So it was a really win-win for everybody. And I recommend doing that. And that was even before I was even on social media, before the days of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And so, that's pretty important too. And I really recommend, especially for young women, to keep it classy. If you want to get into this hunting industry and you love to hunt and fish, keep it classy, because there's a lot of women who don't.
sure.
And, they might attract a certain demographic and a certain attention, but any real serious hunting companies are going to look for women or girls who really love what they do, who get their hands dirty, who aren't just in it for the grip and grin, but maybe are in it for the whole process of spending time and scouting, pre-scouting, scouting, field dressing, tracking, all the
Right.
kind of things that actually go into a hunt. Um,
Education.
but I would hate to discourage anybody yet, but like anything, it's a lot of hard work. But if you love it, it's worth it.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing too is, you know, I've wanted to do this for a long time. It was just one of those deals where I didn't have the capabilities of doing so, whether it be work related or resources, let's say. And
Sure.
um, when my wife and I met, and it's kind of funny because we actually met at Cabela's, believe it or
Oh,
not,
nice,
in the archery department. So,
nice.
um,
Well, that's a good woman right there.
oh heck yeah. Um, and she was really bummed too because she was actually planning on being here and being a part of this, but she ended up getting stuck at work. So she
Oh,
made sure she said, make sure you tell Jana that I'm sorry I couldn't make it and I'm bummed.
oh, that's
So,
sweet. No problem.
but yeah, it's it's interesting because there is so much work involved in it that I didn't realize. And you start getting into it and you go, man, I sure hope this is going to be worth it. But
Yeah,
at the same time, I really enjoy this part of it when I get to communicate, talk, and because I don't consider myself an expert on anything, and I love to get the opinions, the thoughts, pick the brains of the people that I feel like, for one, that I respect in the business, and that's how I learn. I mean,
yeah,
I've learned so much
yeah,
from just the few times that I've done this with people.
yeah.
So,
That's great. I love it. I love that story. It's a testament to chasing your dreams, and a lot of. I think that's the smart approach, though. Really, is you know maybe having um, a part of hunting fishing, whether you want to be a writer or have a podcast, or you want to have a YouTube channel, whatever it be. Have it start out as a hobby, if you will, and then possibly turn it into a full-time career. There's a lot less pressure starting it like that, but you're going to, like you said, you're going to learn what you love or don't love about it. And it's all a growing process. And, that's life, though. I mean,
yeah,
you figure out what you like and don't like, and you hopefully get the time to follow where your heart is.
sure, sure, exactly. Well, and it's people like you and some others that I've had on here. I talked to Christy last week, Christy Titus, and
Love her.
yeah, I know she said you guys were together. I think it was last weekend or week before or something like that.
Yeah, Chrissy Titus. She is. I'll tell you, that girl's a diamond in the rough. You would look at that girl from across the Cabela's floor room and say, there's no way that beautiful girl gets her hands dirty. And I'll tell you what, that girl has more skill in the backcountry than most women I know. I have mad respect for Chrissy Titus. She is an elk hunting machine. She's an amazing caller.
Yep.
She packs her own mules. She, loads her own bulls out. I mean, she's hardcore, and you wouldn't know it by glancing at her because she's a beauty queen. And I love her to death. I'm actually real honored. Her and I, as well as Julie McQueen, Jules, all three of us did a project called Women Who Hunt. It's just a short documentary that's coming out August 18th on Carbon TV. And they did a great job. They came out to Montana, and us three girls stayed at the house here and filmed with them for a couple of days, just about why we hunt and what it means to us.
Awesome.
And I've seen the preview, and I'm really excited for everybody else to see it too. It's going to be launching August 18th on Carbon TV.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be great.
Yeah, it's they did a good job. I was honored to be a part of it.
Well, and that's what we were bugging her about. We said, well, if you guys are all together and you got some time, you can make a phone call and we could get you all on here together. That would be really cool.
Yeah, but you realize we're going to just interrupt each other like crazy. I don't know how well it works on a podcast.
Right. So, on a different note, how do you start a conversation, or how do you, what's the best word? I don't want to say deal with, because it's not a deal with. How do you get into a conversation with somebody that, for one, is a non-hunter and somebody that is an anti-hunter?
Well, I've had lots of conversations with both. Typically, the anti-conversation is through social media as they sit behind their keyboard. We call them keyboard cowboys who've never had their butts in a real saddle. Unfortunately, the conversations I typically have with them aren't constructive. And I usually ban and delete before. I've learned over the years to ban and delete, their rude comments before even engaging in such conversation. You can tell when someone has a legitimate question or if they are out to harass you, which we all get on social media.
Right.
If someone says to me, I thought mountain lions were endangered, well, that to me is a legitimate question that I want to help educate them on. And and to explain to them that no, they're not endangered. In fact, they are overpopulated here in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. And here's the link where you can read a recent study about that, from the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, that kind of thing. Or you can tell if they're out to call you names, which many antis are, and they start out their sentence with crude language or, something rude. Well, I have learned that they are not interested in becoming educated or learning anything about our lifestyle. Simply ban and delete those people. That's my advice. But if I'm talking with a non-hunter who, it often will come up, like, how do you kill an animal? Maybe something as simple as that, and maybe something as, they don't mean to be intrusive. They just don't know. They didn't grow up with hunting. They don't understand, and yet they're the ones, by the way, going through the drive-thru and ordering a burger without even realizing it.
Yeah.
But I have no problem. In fact, I really enjoy talking to non-hunters who may pose that kind of question, because how I just start is, well, were you aware, first of all, that every hunter I know, that we are animal lovers? And of course, there's always the few the poachers that, bring a bad rap to hunting, just like any other career. There's good cops, bad cops, good teachers, bad teachers, good lawyers, bad lawyers, whatever, in every situation. But primarily speaking, the hunters that I know, we love animals and we love this land. And did you know that we hunters are the ones who are paying for wildlife management in this country? And, start the conversation like that, because most non-hunters who didn't grow up in a hunting family have no idea that the connection that hunting is conservation, that we are managing our wildlife, that we are loving to watch elk. And because I might take, hopefully, one elk out of the herd for my freezer, that's knowing where my meat comes from. That's helping manage the herd so it doesn't get overpopulated. That's appreciating that animal and all the work that went into getting that fresh organic meat, explaining to them the whole process, explaining that I went out 15 days before I, released an arrow or pulled a trigger. Open up that dialogue. I think we as hunters have a responsibility to talk to non-hunters as much as we can about about our way of living and our lifestyle and what we're giving back to the environment. Hunters protect more habitat than any single group in this country.
Sure.
We are the ones, through our conservation groups and, through our taxes, that set aside public lands for everyone to enjoy, whether I'm hunting on it or that other person's hiking on it or bird watching on it. We hunters are the ones who set aside, and so that land is never going to be built upon. We do that more than any other group in this country. Start dialogue like that. That's what I would recommend, and it's really about education. And if then, I take that back. One time I had a conversation. He was an African-American professor from McGill University. I sat next to him on an airplane, and he said, "So what do you do?" And I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm like, well, I host a hunting television show. And his first comment out of his mouth was, "You're not one of those NRA nut jobs, are you?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I am." And that's how our conversation started. And for 2 hours on a flight, we talked about our backgrounds. He was from inner city Chicago, grew up where gang violence was harsh and a reality, where all guns were bad. I told him how I grew up and my, passion for the great outdoors and my conservation groups that I 7 of them that I belong to. And it was literally, and this is what I was going to say. He's the only one I've ever said, "Well, you must be a vegan then." And he said, "In fact, I am." And so not only was he anti-gun, anti-hunting, and a vegan, which most people aren't, because it's a very difficult lifestyle to
Sure.
lead if you're a strict vegan, and I have respect for that. I really do. So I got an email from that gentleman the next day, and it was literally one of the best emails I've ever received. It was thanking me for that open dialogue, for opening up his eyes a little bit. Whether I changed his mind or not, I don't know, but it was an appreciation for a different point of view. And I'm always going to try to remember that when meeting someone else like him, which I'm sure I will over the years, of just trying to explain my perspective and listening to his perspective as well. And, is he eating meat today? Probably not. Am I going to be a vegan? Heck no. But, to have that open dialogue, the who we really as hunters need to reach is the other 10%. So they did a big study. They do a big study every 5 years, a big consensus about hunting and fishing. And I believe this year that it's going to be taken again. What they have found is that in the U.S., about 10% of the U.S. on average, we're hunters. There's another 10% that are anti-hunters. But there's 80% that really don't have an opinion either way. They're non-hunters, but they don't have a staunch opinion.
Right.
We need to reach that 80%. I'm not concerned about the 10% because they feel as strong in their convictions as I do in mine. We need to reach that 80% of non-hunters and explain to them what our lifestyle is all about.
Sure, and I think that a lot of that comes down to when you do meet somebody, to not get on the defensive right away.
Yep.
Show restraint. And, I plead this from everybody that hunts and fish too. Try to look at it from their perspective because they don't understand what we're doing. And a lot of that is what it is. It's just they're uneducated. They have maybe misconceptions. And when you step back from that and you explain it in a reasonable manner, a lot of times they're like, I never thought of it that way.
Right. They really are. In fact, recently I was at a VFOP event, Veteran Family of Brands event in Kalispell here, Big Fork. And I was talking with a woman from California, and she is not a hunter. She actually works in the organic food industry, but she's pro-hunting, like understands the need for it, but she doesn't hunt herself. But she was completely unaware of the conservation side of things and the fact that our hunters' dollars are actually managing our wildlife state to state. She didn't understand that. She was not aware of that connection. And we had a great conversation. And I think that you're right. It's really important to remember to stay calm and to, hopefully, back yourself with education. Simply one website that comes to mind, if you want to have a little ammunition in your back pocket, so to speak, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has 25 reasons why hunting is conservation. And it's one page. It's on their website, super easy. You can screen capture it on your phone and read it every so often so that you have a little ammunition to go back to somebody that you meet who might be against hunting or not for it. And it's just little, tidbits of really what we hunters have done in this country in the last, 80, 90 years and what we've done to give back.
Excellent info. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, lighten it up a little bit. I want to talk about your skull work.
Okay.
What got you into doing that? Because some of the stuff you make it's so cool.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My dad actually came back from a trip to New Mexico and he had taken, I believe it or not, I think it was a Polaroid for your young listeners. A Polaroid is an old camera. Yeah, exactly. And he took a picture of a painted ram skull that he saw in like some antique store in New Mexico. And he goes, you ought to do this with your skulls, because I had quite the skull collection over the years, whether they were mine or finding them shed hunting, or I've just always thought they were super cool. And so I started painting some whitetail skulls I had around the house. This is a long time ago. And sort of just in a Native American dot design style. And then that led to painting, scenery and other styles of painting on buffaloes. And then I started buying skulls on eBay and garage sales and anywhere I could, and started my site paintedskulls.com. And then I actually sold them off my site for a while. Now I'm too busy to keep that up. But then after a couple of years of painting them, it evolved into stoning them and beating them with different kinds of, arrowheads and wooden beads, to Swarovski crystals, to feathers, to you name it, I'll stick it on a skull. And it's really, it's keeping me super busy. In fact, I'm about 8 months turnaround time right now. I'm getting kind of swamped, and swamp's a good thing, but I feel bad saying I'm actually a longer turnaround time than a taxidermist. But Yeah, I love it. People send me their skulls to do. They can contact me through Painted Skulls or skullboundtv.com, but they'll send me their skulls to do. They pick out sort of the style that they want, and we go from there. Or I actually am doing skulls in my spare time, which there's not a lot of,
I
but
was going to say,
I
when
do
is
skulls
that?
occasionally. I know, right? There's a store in Jackson Hole that carries my skulls called The Native. It's an amazing sort of art gallery, and they started carrying my skulls a few months ago. They've done really well there. I just went there last week and delivered 3 more. Actually took them off my walls because I've been so busy. But yeah, it's fun to have a store to send people to, and especially Jackson Hole is so touristy. A lot of people go there and send me pictures from the gallery standing in front of my skulls, which is really fun. But and then of course we work it into the show. That's why we named our show Skullbound. I still am donating skulls to my conservation groups that I belong to, and also some veteran organizations to give back and hopefully raise some good money for good causes. But yeah, it's been crazy busy. I never really realized it could ever get this big.
Yeah, well, it looks like, I mean, like I said, some of the stuff that we've seen that you've done, I mean, they're really, really cool. The way that and I guess I should ask this, on the ones that you've painted, I mean, have you always
Hmm.
had that artistic I mean, did you start that at a young age or?
Well, I've always actually painted for fun, and like I took art in high school. That's as much as I've ever taken art classes. My dad and I used to paint together for fun. We actually took a senior center art class together once, and that was really fun.
Nice.
When I lived in Wisconsin, we went painting once a week together. Um, and I I love to paint. Um, there are so many amazing artists out there that are, I feel, 10 times better than it than I am. So the beading has become my favorite because it's really unique and really not a lot of people doing that. I have to shout out to Nevada Grassi. He's a friend of mine who actually carves skulls. He's absolutely amazing. And so if you get a chance, you got to go look at Nevada Grassi's Instagram or Facebook account. Um, I just have been really lucky to have the platform of Skullbound, and so my skulls do really well. I really think anybody could do it if they just had the time and the materials. But it's really fun. It's fun to hear the stories behind the skulls that I get to do, and it's really fun to have someone send me a video or pictures once they receive their skull and they're just super excited about something that I handmade. It's just a cool feeling.
Heck yeah. Well, it would be really cool, and maybe
Hmm.
we can talk about this sometime if we could get one for our RMEF chapter here when we do our banquet.
Yeah.
Check into that and see. I bet you that'd be a
Yeah, I'll put you on
killer.
the list. You'd be 2023, but I'll put you on the list.
No doubt.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, Jana, I appreciate you carving out time because I know you're super busy. And
Oh, I love the chat. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
what do you have coming up? Let everybody know what you got in the future.
Let's see. I've got a sturgeon fishing trip in a couple of weeks here. The one hunt I'm looking probably forward to the most is I'm taking Eric Galvan hunting. Eric is a triple amputee. He has no legs and only left arm. He is one of my heroes. He is an amazing person. I've met him in person. I met him through Wishes for Warriors, and he's, you know, in college. He's just a go-getter. He hasn't let life slow him down. When yet, I think that kind of, those kind of injuries would have stopped a lot of people. He's just a force to be reckoned with, and I love his attitude and his positive nature. And he's actually going to college for like social work and psychology because he wants to change the VA.
Oh,
Like
wow.
yeah, you gotta love him for that.
Heck yeah.
But he has never been elk hunting. He's done some whitetail hunting, I know, but he's never been elk hunting. So I'm so excited because we're taking him to Wyoming, and thanks to R&K Hunting Company, they have offered the hunt to him. He gets to stay in a nice lodge and hopefully wake up to bulls bugling. And to me, being with someone like Eric is so motivational in and of itself. It just makes you feel like your problems are not worth complaining about. But to be able to hear, that first bull bugle with someone who's never heard it before and smell, that musky smell as you're getting
Yeah.
up on bulls. Like, there's nothing better than that. And that's the one hunt that I am absolutely dying to get on. Like, I can't wait.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's going to be awesome.
Heck yeah. And that's coming out this fall, or you're taping it this
Yep.
fall?
That's this October.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great.
Yep. October in Wyoming. And let's see what else. I've got a Utah muzzleloader hunt at the end of September. Hopefully the bucks will still be in velvet, which would be awesome.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I've got all of Montana. I've still got a bear tag, elk tag, deer tag for Montana, antelope tags for Montana. That's the beauty of living out here. I can do probably 6 episodes right here in Montana. And so that's pretty awesome.
Oh,
and,
darn.
with the help of Onyx Maps now has a hunt app for your phone, and it's amazing. I mean, it literally tells you what kind of land you're on. Is it forestry? Is it BLM? If it's private land, the land ownership names. I mean, literally, you can just go out with that app and start exploring. It has opened up so many more areas of hunting than we were even aware of years ago. So we've got all those hunts.
And it's relatively inexpensive for that
Oh,
app.
yeah. It's like $19 a year. I don't think,
Yeah.
I mean, if you used it even for one hunt, it's worth it. And the fact that, like, this is really funny. I was shed hunting in Wisconsin at my dad. I usually go shed hunting at my dad's place up near the Dells. Well, this time I was at his place and on his neighbor's place, this big kind of corn pasture, like rolling pines. And I was shed hunting this year by myself and got spun around. And I'm like, wait a minute, because I'd never shed hunted there before. And of course, I have my head to the ground. I'm looking for sheds. I got spun around and I heard the highway where I thought it was, and I was trying to triangulate from the highway. And I got spun around. All of a sudden, I'm at this big deer stand I didn't recognize. I'm like, that's not my dad's. Like, where am I? I had to pull up the old Onyx Maps to find my dad's house. Like, literally was not planning on using that map, but it led me right back to my dad's house. So it can come in handy, too. And, it's really nice to not even for, marking your truck. You get spun around, you get an animal down, and you're in the dark, and you got it, where's your truck at? There's just so many. That app to me is priceless.
Well, there you go. That's your testimony for him.
Yeah, it's true though. Like it's so I get asked a lot, like, what is the one tool that you couldn't live without? Well, out here in the West and other states too, but I couldn't live without Onyx Maps because we do almost all public land hunting.
Sure.
And it's literally finding your truck in the dark or marking that animal to go back for the second round or whatever it is. We literally live and breathe by that app.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we got a Missouri whitetail hunt coming up in November. I'm taking Mark Bayless, who's retired Special Forces veteran, so that's going to be another good hunt. But yeah, it's going to be a big fall.
You're going to be a busy girl.
Yep.
That's good though. Well,
Yep.
Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and I would love to throw my name out there for your Wishes for Warriors to take somebody out at a chance at a world record walleye on the Columbia River. So.
Hey, careful! I'm gonna send when we get off here. I'm gonna send you Brian Marshall. He's the founder of Wishes. I'm gonna send you his contact info. They're always looking for people willing to take out their warriors.
Oh heck,
so
yeah.
I appreciate that, and we'll talk details on that for sure.
Certainly, I'd love the chance to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Jana, I appreciate it. I hope we can do it again when you're less busy, maybe in your off season.
We'll talk after the fall, and we'll see how all these hunts went.
Perfect. And they can find you on Facebook, Jana Waller, or Skullbound TV.
Yep, I'm under my page is Skullbound TV on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Perfect.
And we have skullboundtv.com, which will actually soon be changing over to a brand new website that's being worked out right now, where people can watch short clips and see product reviews. It's much more interactive than what we have right now, but when we're a two-man band, things get put to the back burner, but that's going to be exciting to launch that new website soon.
Excellent. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you this season, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Get Bit Outdoors Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at Get Bit Outdoors Podcast, Twitter at Get_Bit Outdoors, and you can get us on iTunes and Stitcher. Leave us a rating and a comment on the show. We love the feedback. Thanks to Fish Face Goods, FX Custom Rods, Cinetic Reels, Max Lures, Yakima Valley Marine, and Slimers. Join us next time as we talk with John Appleton. John is owner and operator of Alpine Archery and Fly Shop. We talk archery setups, how he goes about setting up new shooters. John's shop is a true full-service archery shop. It's a great show. Thanks for listening to Get Bit Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Lonnie Craighead. And if you enjoy this show, check out Archery Maniacs with Zach Harrell.